Hey Staten Island, this is HealthWish, a conversation about the state of healthcare in the fabulous 5th borough. Our aim is to raise issues, raise awareness, and raise health. Because when we raise health, we raise everyone.
Today, from Violette, Cellar, it's part 3 of our conversation with Staten Island University Hospital's Director of Otolaryngology, Dr. David Hiltzik. We begin this final episode by asking Dr. Hiltzik if he has a favorite medical or surgical procedure. Give a listen.
What are some surgeries that stick out to you? What are some of your procedures that you like to do?
Well, I'm going to give sort of a obvious answer. The truth is I like every procedure that I'm doing.
It's a very...
no, which is true.
Yeah.
Like I really...
Diplomatic.
Because I do like variety. I mean, my subspecialty is doing sinus surgeries and a lot of thyroid and parathyroid surgeries. But my original training was in skull-based surgery. So when I get to work with my neurosurgical colleagues, I love technically doing those procedures because they're very anatomically interesting. The pathologies are interesting. They're technically, on a high level. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy cases where I actually get to work with other services. So same things if I'm doing like a thyroid surgery and I'm working with cardiothoracic surgery in the cardiac ORs, and there's always that element of, do we have to go into the chest? Do we not? Because sometimes we can avoid it. And doing those kind of surgeries and working with some of my other colleagues here is great. It's nice to have a nice, more straightforward day of doing some of the more basic stuff. So from the element of doing like nasal surgeries, you're really improving, and sinus surgeries, you're improving people's quality of life in major ways by letting them breathe better and overall function better, whether you can make them smell better or taste better or have less fatigue. Like those are high impact kind of quality of life sort of things. Or listen, as simple as putting in an ear tube in a child, you're giving them their hearing back. So when you kind of realize what you're doing, and how you're impacting even in the smaller surgeries, they all kind of still maintain, excitement to me. But obviously, some obviously other, more than others.
And I can give my personal patient testimonial of your services providing, or at least improving my quality of life, because I was having sleeping issues. And after my procedure, I started to dream again, which was wild because I wasn't for a long time because I was just getting such poor sleep. So, it's true, those small things, I mean, it was a game changer for me, and I was feeling less fatigued and actually had more energy throughout the day and actually just feeling like a human being again. So, there's a lot of truth to that. Even firsthand, I can agree, like, thanks.
Earlier you said, when you're in the operating room, everybody's there for you, right? All the support staff is there to aid in the work that you're doing. What's it like being in the OR with other surgeons as well? Does sometimes it feel like too many chefs in the kitchen?
No, if you have a colleague who you work well with, then it actually takes all that to another level, because you're then sort of two people of one mind, and that's very exciting when those things kind of happen. Sort of
like a greater than the sum of your parts.
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely. Because then you both have an understanding and you both have an approach. Sometimes it's like you may have a little difference, but then you interact, talk it out, go through it as you're going through, and then that even I find is even more engaging and elevates the process. Because it's clearly, whatever you're working on is clearly complex, and yet you're coming with another surgeon to get to the best outcome.
So when you were in college then in Philly, is that when you decided you wanted to do medicine and then even an extension of that ENT? Or how did that process? Were you a young kid and said, okay, I want to be a doctor?
No, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure. That has evolved in life. My grandfather was a scientist, so he was a physical chemist and actually worked on the Manhattan Project.
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother was a science teacher. So there was an element of the science component on my mother's side of the family. And then my father's side of the family were all lawyers. So it was kind of a little bit of a fusion of, that's why the science and the humanistic sort of thing that kind of gets together. Not to say that lawyers are too humanistic, but the idea is, no, but of literature and
Yes.
and or those like more humanities and science sort of balance, that aspect sort of helped evolve, because the truth is, in college I was a liberal arts major. So
wow.
So I didn't even
No chem.
I didn't.
bio?
No, I took all my pre-meds, but that was not what I was sort of interested in pursuing. I knew I was going to med school, and so I did a Middle Eastern Studies major and then an art minor. So that was sort of the stuff that I kind of. And then when I went to medical school, actually, I went to Mount Sinai, which had a special program that connected not to Penn, which is where I went, but to other small liberal arts schools. So you actually had like-minded people who I was in medical school with, who really liked the liberal arts component, but also wanted to be physicians at the same time. So I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. And then as I got older and I liked working with my hands and stuff, I knew that I wanted to be a surgeon. And then the question then was which specialty, you would fall into. And ear, nose, and throat sort of had this nice element of diversity in the sense that you were treating young kids and you were treating all the way up to people, nonagenarians. And then you're doing all spectrums of disease, from the more, quality of life things to more cancer. The anatomy is particularly amazing. And that always, even my first year of medical school, was extraordinarily appealing. That really excited me, was the human anatomy. And the skull base anatomy, which is then what I did my fellowship in, is some of the most, per space interesting anatomy to learn.
You knew what your trajectory was, but you knew also that in that trajectory there'd be a lot of discovery.
Yes,
And,
that's very well stated.
yeah. And it's funny too, because I try to associate certain elements of medicine, like association, try to allow myself to digest it a little bit by like free association. And it sounds like, instead of like the car mechanic working on big things, you're working more on like electronics, fine tuning. You need the soldering iron, and you need the small screwdrivers and the delicate tighter spaces to kind of work in.
Right.
Which is what I mean, at least again, for me to sort of process that,
Right.
like that's how I'm looking at
Right.
it.
So I could see what you mean
Yeah.
by the more delicate, intricate, smaller.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
Small
each
spaces.
millimeter makes a difference,
Yeah.
and that's true in a lot of specialties, but particularly in ours.
What's it like to see that patient's reaction when, just say, they lost all their hearing in their right ear very suddenly, and then you brought it back and now they can hear it?
I mean, there's a mix of, excitement, joy, fulfillment, all of those sorts of things of when you're able to give something back. Because it actually is very frightening to lose these things. And I think that's one of those things I've learned as I've kind of gone along, is you have to try to put yourself in the place of the patient.
So just real quick, switching gears, breaking you down a little bit more. Let's go through some pop culture kind of things. So what are some of your favorite movies since, growing up?
So it's funny. I've been watching a lot of ones with my kids because I've had to, and you realize that there's been a lot of good movies. So I like the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
I'm watching The Mandalorian, so I'm keeping up on
Fantastic
that.
show.
Fantastic. It's like so well done and so Star Wars. And even better than, if you put them together, better than some of the movies.
Yeah, it's almost as though true to the original trilogy, but more heightened and enhanced.
Yeah.
And what I really love about that show, so a lot of the scenic effects
Amazing.
were actually sort of on TV, quote unquote, behind them, which was really, really, really cool. Yeah, so some of that stuff they didn't do in post, but anyway, I digress. So you like Star Wars movies?
So I like that. And then I like more thoughtful movies, like Shawshank Redemption's always like a big favorite of mine.
Shawshank's, that's a movie you always put on.
Yeah.
If it's on, you're watching it.
Right.
You're stopping what you're doing.
It's so deep, and there's so many different parts of appreciating life, and in that movie, and
And
my
humanity
grandfather
in bad situations.
Oh no, you can go on. Yeah, that was one of my grandfather's. He really liked that movie. The swings of the movie from the positive, emotionally, I was like, yes, he's doing something so amazing, and then you drop, the ups and downs that are quite emotional. I just watched the other night Good Will Hunting with my kids, and that was kind of another meaningful kind of.
A lot of people didn't realize that Ben Affleck did a lot of films with Kevin Smith. He did a lot of so a lot of those small indie films. He was actually
Clerks. It was a great afternoon. I remember exactly who I was with and where I
Really?
was when I watched that movie. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
what-
my parents were away that weekend, and so it was like one of the times in college where my brother and I and our friends all stayed at the house, like at my parents' house together, and that was the movie we watched over the weekend, which was
That's
just
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
That's great.
So we really, so that was like a classic. No, I love Robin Williams movies. You know, he's just, you know, as an actor, just amazing in so many different levels and so creative. So I like you know, those sorts. So, you know, and I'll always love James Bond movies too. Even all the Marvel movies is really where people came from and how that shaped them into the personalities who they are when they mature.
It's funny because I noticed that too. There's a lot of blurring of the lines. Like Bond is a good example, and Marvel is a good example too. In that not only do they make the heroes more human, but they make the villains more human too.
Right.
So like, you know,
I had a time in the end of like the end game and just understanding Thanos's whole way of really wanting to save humanity from itself is very intense.
And
you know?
and that's how they
but
make
yet
like
what it takes to get there is
Exactly.
because it makes maybe
it enhances
That
the
is
conflict.
interesting.
It enhances
Right.
the conflict,
Right,
and it really
exactly.
creates that sort of dissonance that's like makes
right.
you on the edge of the
It's not
seat.
black and white.
Yeah.
It's not black and white.
I
It
think
gives you
what-
things to think about.
Marvel does well as also is that they make the good guys kind of bad. And you know what I mean? It adds that level of
there's that blurring.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
it's not
and
quite.
you want to root for the good guys, but then they do something what you think that a normal hero wouldn't do, and it's like, well, I just love this character, and now he just betrayed it, you know, or whatever it is, and it kind of makes you think more. Okay, well, good people can have that.
Well, it speaks to the gray in life.
Yeah, but I do like with all of that, they keep Captain America as this super, like, by the books, has to do
Integrity.
good, worthy. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's
So it's funny,
which again,
that was the one my son wanted. I have to watch when he comes back from camp. I'm gonna have to watch that one. He wanted to watch that one before he left.
well, it's
So
a
I'm
good
gonna
it's a
watch
good
that
movie
one
to
again,
watch.
and I watch
It's
that
a good
one
movie to
again.
watch. Yeah.
Dr. Hiltzik, thank you so much for being here. I think this was very informative. We loved having you on, and hopefully down the line we'll have you on again.
Yes, thank you guys so much for all the time and effort that you put into this and for making it a fun experience.
And thank you for operating on each and every one of us.
It was a pleasure, and thank God you're all doing it well, so even better.
Fantastic. HealthWish wishes to thank our very special guest, Dr. David Hiltzik, Director of Otolaryngology at Staten Island University Hospital. We're very interested in your health wish. Contact us at healthwish@northwell.edu. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.